you're expected to work, or that's the expectation, to work an infinite amount of time almost, or work as much as you possibly can, like the 996 working schedule.
Yeah, from 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the evening,
yes.
Right? And 6 days in a week.
So that's basically Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. in the morning to 9 p.m. in the evening. What do you do after that? You go home, maybe ramp down a little bit, go to bed, and then you have to get up and work again 6 days a week. So that's 72 hours, right? And even 72 hours, I mean, many people work more than that, especially in the startup space.
But you said something that I think is maybe one thing. In Sweden or in Europe, we are maybe with our old engineering culture, it's not only that we work, but we have a more structured view of from A to B and how that should play out. So we are effective and get maybe impact in those hours. Whereas Americans, there the work culture is more result based. So it's like, so we have this target, we have this delivery. I don't care how you do it, you work 24/7 towards the result. So there's a distinction here a little bit how you view your work.
I think so, but I think the most important thing in Europe is that by just saying, living in the culture where the normal work is 8 to 5, you kind of get to cram in all your responsibility within that box to the maximum extent possible. Whereas in a startup environment in Silicon Valley, there's no 8 to 5. There is whatever. So therefore, you may slack around a little bit more during the day and then work evening times instead. So that discipline isn't really there.
You said something that is like, so having experienced both, you're not necessarily getting more work done, those 60% from our 60 to 80, so to speak. So in a way, if you structure yourself disciplined in those normal hours, the actual quality of work and outcome is not that different.
No. I personally, I definitely think so. I mean, 40-hour weeks, if you have a thinking job, that's still a lot of mental load that you're putting into the work that you're doing, right? If you ramp that up to 60 hours, you're working quite a lot. Beyond 60, I think you're definitely hitting a huge point of no benefit.
Diminishing returns. Yeah. What about working in the office or from home? What do you think the culture there is?
Oh, everything changed after COVID, right? I mean, everyone is now trying to get people back into the office. As if we look at just the efficiency of work, I think that greatly depends on the person that you're talking to.
Yeah.
Some persons are very disciplined and they can do work at home. When I studied in the university, for example, I couldn't sit in my student dorm and do work. I had to go to the library and sit because there I was disciplined.
It probably depends how productive you can be working from home. But in Sweden, it's still kind of open to work from home. I know Spotify, for example, have the work from anywhere kind of policy, but
they've been quite vocal about that also as a contrast, especially in the US market, to make that almost like a selling point.
Yeah. But then there is also, I mean, there's a lot of value actually meeting people, talk to people. So fully working remote on the other side creates isolation and all kinds of problems associated with that coordination, getting to know the other people socially. Teams meeting or Google Meets meeting compared to a physical meeting is very different. Yes.
Right? And you, of course, have both worked in a startup environment, both here in Stockholm and then in US, and then from a startup environment into a Google environment. So if you contrast a little bit the startup culture with sort of the tech giant culture and Sweden, can we sort of, because in my opinion, even if you go to a startup in Stockholm, you get that sort of Luma hero approach.
I mean, the hero work, right? Sure. I mean, when I was running the startup, sometimes we slept under the desk. And the thing with startups is that everyone has such a broad spectrum of responsibilities.
Yeah.
In particular, founders and or the leadership, where you need to be able to hire people, do career management, customer acquisition, financing, all of these things combined in your workday.
If we look a bit further ahead and take like software engineers, for example, some people are claiming, oh, AI will take all the jobs, but couldn't it be the case that we just reduce the workload that we have to have as humans, and perhaps we don't need to work 996, or perhaps even just work 20 hours a week?
It's a combination, right? It's definitely a combination. If you look at the spreadsheet, when that was introduced back in the, 1990s, early 1990s, I mean, what did we do before then? It was a lot of manual labor to do what spreadsheets were able to do going into the 90s. And the same thing with AI, right? There are certain things that AI will be able to automate that was not possible at all before. So there is going to be all variations to this team. I think from a personal perspective, the thing that AI creates that we have never, ever seen before is the ability for a machine to mimic the thinking process of a human.
But just going back to the working hours per week, I heard someone say, and I hope it's a nice outlook in the future. Perhaps in 10 years, you will look back and say, do you know, back in 2026, they actually worked 40 hours a week. That's crazy. We would just work like 2-3 days a week, and that's it. Do you think that could be the case?
Well, the question is how the economics is going to work out. What is the new economical model that we can roll out to the world coherently and in a structured way that doesn't cause too much disruption to our cultures and that would be able to support that?
It would be a nice future, right?
Well, maybe. Have you seen the movie WALL-E?
Yeah.
I mean, in the end, everything gets automized and the people are just sitting there watching TV and eating pizzas, and they don't even know how to make the pizzas because the machines are making the pizzas. And that's the kind of spectrum of what their experience of life is in the end.
Sounds like a perfect ending theme as well. We'll get back to that question. But before that, very welcome here. I'm very glad to have you, Magnus Hyttsten, here at the AIAW Podcast. Very prominent person, been working 13 years at Google and now also an expert in compliance work and how to really bring about quality from LLMs and AI in general. So that will be a very interesting theme, I believe, to dig much deeper into.
So AI quality and AI security and compliance in relation to how to work with the large models, and even in the European context with the EU AI Act.
Yeah.
But before we go into that, perhaps you can just give us a quick personal background, really. Who is Magnus Hyttsten?
Personal background, let's start at the year 2000. Essentially founder of a startup here in Stockholm that's still around, sizable company called Digital. Worked as a CTO of that company up until 2013, so did everything pretty much, hiring, financing, customer acquisition, core product development,
the founder
RFP
role.
Responses, etc.
How many founders were you? You
6, 7, so quite a lot of founders in that company. Anyhow,
it was ETL for telcos.
ETL, extract, transform, load for telecommunications specifically, and worked there until 2013, and then thought. Been 14 years now with this startup. It wasn't a startup anymore. So I decided what would be exciting. And at that point, I lived in the US working with Verizon as a customer.
Yeah, that was the story you told us before. You got Verizon as a large customer, and they say, hey, if you want to work with us, you kind of need to live here. And
exactly.
That's how it worked.
There was no way of working from Europe to support tier 1 communications operator in the US.
The customer made you move to US originally.
Yeah. And it was exciting. I mean, the first couple of engagements was just a couple of months here and there. And then I ended up spending, me and my family ended up staying 13 years over there.
Yeah.
And you got in contact somehow to Google at that point, right?
Yes. So decided it's time to move on. I want to work at Google, ideally Mountain View. So I applied, got in there. Worked a couple of years on mobile, which was really not my home turf. I was used to working back end data center stuff. So 2016, there was this project called TensorFlow that started at Google, and it was the open sourcing of the internal work that had been done.
What was the name of the internal? It was not Borg, right?
Disbelief.
Disbelief, right?
So we are talking about the origin of TensorFlow, and maybe we can do a little bit of a backdrop how big deal this is in the machine learning world when TensorFlow, because we have the open source frameworks, PyTorch. TensorFlow was the original, I would argue.
Yeah, you have scikit-learn and a couple of other ones, that Torch that were floating around, but TensorFlow was the real kind of unification of this coming together in an open source strategy.
And is TensorFlow still the biggest, or who is PyTorch? You know, how would you?
It's one of those.
One of those, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are trying to press into JAX and things like that. Or?
Exactly. I mean, JAX is the other framework from Google, right? And it grew up based on the experiences, the learning from TensorFlow, the good and the bad. But it was focused a little bit more on the research community, obviously at Google with Google Research. TensorFlow still had the kind of, how do we take this model to production? What are the high-level APIs that we can use? Even if JAX has higher-level APIs, now that's where TensorFlow came from, really. How do we make this, democratize it? I don't like that word, but democratize machine learning to the world. Yeah. And the answer was TensorFlow.
I don't want to rip apart your introduction here, but I'm so curious to understand a little bit like what was your role and what was the environment you worked in with TensorFlow. This is because it's such a pivotal moment in machine learning.
So TensorFlow is probably one of the most exciting times of my professional career. I must say that a lot of the years in Digital also was really exciting. But TensorFlow was one of these projects. I mean, Jeff Dean, I don't know if you know Jeff Dean, but he's one of the, he is the technical brain of Google. He really went out and said, I want to make TensorFlow public domain. And therefore, everything centered the project around that kind of technical authority. So we were sitting in one building, everyone, engineering, and I was running the DevRel team. So our team's job was really to write the samples, make the documentation solid, do all of the outreach, the events, collect the feedback from the developers, how happy they were with the usability of the product, and all of these different things. So everything coming together during those initial 2-3 years with TensorFlow.
And to the risk of continuing the rabbit hole here with TensorFlow, but soon getting back to your personal background, but still, cool. They actually went open source as well. And that was a big and bit daring move in some way, since they potentially would give away some of their secret sauce, but on the other hand, they could get a lot of benefits back from all the community providing to it. Or can you elaborate a bit more about why do you think they chose to go open source?
The way I heard this, and I can by no means vouch that this is the correct story, but the way I heard this is that Jeff Dean, he created Bigtable that became Hadoop. He created many other technologies within Google. I mean, the entire data center foundation, from a software perspective, is his work. And he was frustrated by the fact that after the research papers came out, there was an open source alternative that was subpar compared to what the thought or the thinking, the vision of the original idea.
Better do it myself to get some shit done properly.
So I think that was, I mean, the way I heard it is that was a strong driver for him to actually go open source.
To avoid someone else actually doing it open source.
And to put down the flag and here is what it is and here is what it should be.
And I think there is a tangent around open source to understand that this is a very viable business strategy. We are not doing it because it's fun and we have some sort of value in it. We are doing it to strategically be a core part of how these techniques evolve. Or how would you frame the
I would say that depends on. There is, I mean, obviously there is tremendous startup value in open sourcing and then building your service organization or managed service on top of your open source idea. I mean, for example, Spark with Databricks and what Ali Godsi is doing now in that position. For Google, I mean, it is important, absolutely, from the perspective of you can bring people in, you can connect them to the TPUs, etc. But again, Google is driven by the need to internally develop. So I would say that the need that exists for these kinds of startups that wants to build a public domain presence is not as big from that perspective on the Google side. Then there are many products at Google, and I shouldn't speak on behalf of Google here, but there are many products that require a completely open surface to be successful because of the developer community.
So here you are actually hinting at a slightly different strategic objective, and that is basically, in order for us to grow into the services we want, we need an open framework at lower levels. And if they are subpar, our products will be hampered by that. So we then invest in this open source in order for us to then shape that foundational layer for us to then do more fancy stuff in our products.
That's a fair statement, I think. And then, I mean, looking backwards at the success that TensorFlow was, I mean, everyone in machine learning knows the term TensorFlow. Everyone knows that Google invented this term. So for Google, I mean, it's no secret that Google is AI first. It used to be mobile first. Now it's AI first since 2017 or something like that, right? So by putting that strategic framing on the company, obviously tremendous amount of importance to actually back that up with something that the general developer community can use.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, so you were at Google for like 13 years, right?
Yeah.
And the TensorFlow, of course, was one of the bigger highlights, I guess.
Yeah.
If you just very briefly would like to highlight something else that you worked with in Google, what would that be?
That would be the cloud. My last 2-3 years at Google, I had my own. I was working on the compiler team actually, compiling TensorFlow and JAX and PyTorch into an immediate representation to execute on GPUs and TPUs. And that was all fine. I mean, very exciting from a technical perspective. But then an old boss of mine called me up and said, "Hey, I'm working in cloud now. We're supposed to launch all of these products based on generative AI. You want to come over and do that?" And I said, I have to be part of this. How can I be a part of this?
So it's the generative AI coming into the bigger...
So you have on the one hand side, you have research here, right? And this is 2023, maybe, kind of right there, smack in the middle of generative AI being created as a concept with ChatGPT. So taking that and then actually launching it to enterprise customers, both from the perspective of training models, getting around to what is a RAG, what is grounding to begin with? Do I use Google search? Do I use embedding databases? How do I get this together? I need to have a workflow. It's not just the LLM, right? Agentic workflows.
So for me to understand this now with sort of the brands that we all know about. So we have Gemini on the one hand side, and then we have how we want to infuse Gemini into the core GCP cloud setup in order to more seamlessly work with agentic workflows, tool use, and together with the underlying Gemini model. Is this the neighborhood we are talking about?
Yes, that sounds like a fair comment. Gemini, from a brand perspective, is extremely wide, right? But the way to look at it from a Google Cloud perspective, I think, is that you have Gemini in workspaces, in your docs, in your spreadsheets, etc. There are 100+ products in Google Cloud. All of them could probably benefit from having a Gen AI capability. And that was really what we set up in Google Cloud to do.
Did you work with some specific service? Was it Gemini specifically? Was it Vertex or AI Studio?
Vertex, obviously, and BigQuery and these all the coding experiences, these kinds of platforms.
If you look back to those years or this, which one was your sort of peak launches or product releases that you were sweating about and drinking champagne over?
So we were sweating. Every single one we were sweating, and we were sweating in between the launches too. let me tell you. I think throughout that entire time, what I did not realize when you are in the mouse spinning wheel, so to say, is the importance of evaluation when it comes to generative AI. And this is a big topic of today's discussion, the quality, right? And that was something I shied away from in the beginning. I thought, oh, that's boring.
But put a small frame on evaluation of LLMs. What are we talking about? How would you frame that? Because it's a super core topic.
Yeah. So what mechanisms do you use to ensure continuously, not just one time, but continuously, that you are working towards a product that fulfills the requirements that you want to try to reach? And the problem here with LLMs that hadn't really landed in me was that the potential space of LLMs is infinite, right? You can talk English to it. It can do mathematical problems. It can write poems in Shakespeare style. So that's fantastic, right? I don't want to limit that. But the fact of the matter is when you go in and you're actually supposed to launch a product that people pay for, what are the important things, right? Is my chatbot allowed to create party invitations in the style of a pirate? Because an LLM can do that foundationally wise. And there is a huge tension when you do that with product management on actually saying, I want to give up all of these possibilities that the LLM have and actually scale it down to just do these things. So at the very end of that cycle, my thinking was this, and this is actually thanks to a team member of mine. He said, we're going to go crazy. The first thing, if anyone comes to us, the first thing we're going to ask for is, what is your evaluation set? Mm-hmm. Okay, because if you have the evaluation set, you have defined what are the important things for the product to do. And you have also defined what is not important for the product to do. Now we can actually focus on scaling the thing down to be able to support
and
that.
Perhaps we can go a bit more into what quality really is and how you define these kind of evaluation sets properly soon. But I'd just like to close the topic as well, a bit about your personal background here. Because you have chosen to leave Google as well, can you just talk a bit more about, what brought you back to Sweden and now working as an expert in these kind of questions?
So first of all, 13 years in the US, we felt it's this, when you're working as an expat in another country, I think, my experience at least, you have one leg in your home country and you have one foot in the country you're in.
Yeah.
And we felt that we wanted to get back to the culture and the way of living that Sweden offered. Yeah. So that was a big driver. After 13 years, we felt that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so you moved back here, and you've been here now for half a year? Or?
Half a year, approximately,
Yeah, you got here in June, and you said you started working more or become more active sort of in October. So what was that? Family back, having some Swedish summer?
Some Swedish summer.
Itching.
Traveling in Europe a little bit, going back to the US to clean up a couple of things. So all of the above, yeah.
And now the whole family and everything is back in Sweden? Or do you have something,
No, nothing left in the US to...
I think so.
Sold the house and it was a
new chapter.
Yeah, it was a very, very big thing.
And just briefly, what are your specialty right now? And you have a new consultancy firm, and what do you specialize on there?
So, motivated and inspired by this realization I had during my final time at Google related to evaluation of LLM-based systems. I felt, and I feel that there is too little focus on actually securing, scaling down, boxing in what we're trying to achieve with AI. Right. The focus is way too much on what AI provides, the possibilities of AI. But when you're actually working with AI, you have to box it in, and evaluation becomes important. The quality of these systems, in order to measure quality, we have to be more restrictive on what we're actually test. We cannot test everything. So that kind of shaping was very important for me. And obviously, when you deal with LLM systems, you can get all kinds of errors, right? And these things are going to influence many, many core systems of our society that are going to be very important to us. So therefore, having responsible AI as part of this equation is really important. So I felt that it's important, like we have a lot of forward motion in the industry, we need to have also a vector in the other direction, kind of taking a step back, looking at this, making sure that we're doing the right thing. We're not going in the wrong direction for importances. So therefore, I founded Assurance Vector with a friend of mine.
Assurance Vector.
Assurance Vector.
Let me test an angle on this and see if we are talking about the same thing. Because one way to understand the landscape right now is that we have now experienced in 24, 25 a strong, the personal productivity frontier, and we are so amazed of all the things we can do high and low as individuals, as a consumer type product. And we can now, like if you want to write nasty letters, you can. I mean, like the same. But what's happening now, in order to tap into the real value, we are slowly moving into, I use the term enterprise grade, or something that is not only for personal use, but in some sort of systemic use. And all of a sudden now we need, the value has more to do with the repetitiveness and be able to trust that whatever, a little bit more deterministic expectations of what not that it's deterministic, but that we can rely on it to consistently produce within a frame, right?
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about here?
Yes. Determinism, you're getting me fired up here. Determinism versus stochasticity.
Yeah, exactly.
LLMs and machine learning inherently is stochastic. And why are we surprised? I mean, we created this thing called learn by example, right? We feed this thing we don't know what the algorithm is. So we said, like when we solve differential equations, that do an ansatz. If we throw this mathematical equation at it, and then we feed it with these different examples, maybe that equation can home in on replicating these examples, right? So of course it's going to be stochastic in nature, because we don't know exactly the ins and outs of how these billions and billions of weights are tuned and what the side effects can potentially be. So we shouldn't be surprised that it's stochastic. I mean, an LLM, based on the words you fed it, I mean, you look at the statistical probability of all the English words, or Swedish for that matter. What is the next probable word based on that? And then you just print words from that process.
It also has inherent parts of it with the temperature that you actually have to choose in a stochastic way. So I mean, it is necessarily stochastic.
But at the same time, it doesn't have to be all stochastic, right? We can actually box this stochasticity. And I actually spent a number of days in a cellar when I started working with evaluation to say, how are we going to test these systems, right? And we cannot send all of the evaluation cycles to an outsourcing agency that does human evaluation, right? Not the same person is evaluating this time versus the other one. What did they have for breakfast? Are they
humans are very stochastic.
Exactly,
as well.
They are very, very stochastic in nature,
and irrational even perhaps.
But there are many, many things we can make deterministic by the way that we formalize the questions that we ask. For example, if we want to test factuality, we can very easily test by asking factual questions to the system and making sure that it's picking up the information from the right place.
But going a bit more concrete, I mean, how do we define it, like quality, for example, of an LLM? And can you just, because it's not easy, I guess.
Yeah.
Can you just go through some of the challenges and some of the preferred ways to actually do evaluations as properly?
The way I came out of that basement exercise is essentially this: what is an LLM? Well, what we've tried to do is create essentially a human, right? We're trying to teach the thing human language. And then human language is also a way to define thinking, I think, but that's a separate discussion. But the thing is, we take this human and we're placing it in to a product that's supposed to do a certain thing. So it's a job, right? So you and I, what do we do in order to get a job, right? We go to school, we get the appropriate education. There's a certain amount of books that are required for this profession, right? That's the grounding. I'm not supposed to derive any results from facts I find on the internet if my profession is grounded in these standards that my job requires. When I go to work at company X and I'm a support engineer, the minute I click in, I kind of feel under the weight or the obligation of the code of conduct of the company. Right. When I pick up the phone, I'm a tech support engineer. I'm not a general person discussing politics or World War history, right? And I think that is really important. So you can start to layer things based on the jobs to be done by the AI system. You're a support technician, so try the system out. Is it willing to create poems in Shakespeare style? That's not really a support job, right? So fail on all of those if it's doing anything. And this is the scaling down, the limiting the system again. The natural language capability is fantastic, but it cannot go beyond certain limits.
So your eval strategy here is basically to shape the frame around the job to be done,
yes,
as a superset that you then can have as a failure or success against.
Exactly. So let's look at some categories here. I mean, one category is job description. So what can you actually define that the AI system should be doing and not be doing? That's an evaluation set in its own right.
Yeah.
And it's deterministic also. Let's talk about appendix removal procedures. Well, if the LLM says anything, but I'm not going to do that, then it's a fail, right?
But also the output is not structured in that way. So you have unstructured output, more or less. How do you actually determine if the output of an LLM is accurate or not?
Yeah, I was wrapping my brain around this. There are mechanisms. I can say this. Please describe the process of appendix removal to me. Yeah. And if you're not able to do that, say, I can't do that. And that's the only thing that you're allowed to respond to in this JSON chart. Now, yeah, so by doing that, I can test all of the negative test cases immediately.
Yeah, so you basically, but then you're prompting it or putting the instruction into the prompt basically to say this is what you should reply? Or?
Exactly, that's one mechanism I can certainly do, right? If I want to test the core capability of the LLM. As opposed to factuality, I can plant specific information in my reference docs that I want to be certain that the system uses for deduction. Maybe there is similar information on the internet which is not as stringent. I can make sure to see that it's coming from.
But if you ask a question about, can you diagnose this patient journal text, and then the reply may be slightly different but still accurate in terms of the semantics, but the syntax is different. How do you still...
Well, you have to force it into a syntax. Now, there are two ways of doing this. You can walk down the deterministic path. In that case, you say, this is the JSON response I want from you, period. Don't deviate from that. And by the way, it's pydantic, so this must be integer, this must be true, false, blah, 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 all of that. So you're going to force the LLM into that deterministic scenario to try to fool it.
But that's one way, right?
The other one is LLM as a judge.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So if, and as I said, I mean, there are certain levels of deterministic that you can use. When evaluating generative AI systems, I want to say, okay, I want to be able to come into the office and say, so how are we doing? We're stage 3. We're stage 3 compliant. Okay. Then I know that stage 0, 1, 2, 3, all those layers of deterministic evaluation, the system is nailing. Okay. Now I can say stage 5 is deterministic also. We're not achieving that right now. And stage 6 beyond may be completely stochastic, where it's the space that this is the magic of the LLM that I cannot control using deterministic tests. But again, we can use LLMs to do that, right? So we can, one single response from the LLM system itself, the AI system, you can use an LLM to say, is the language in the tone of a support engineer?
Right.
Yes or no. So now you analyzed the stochastic response by using a stochastic system to deduce a deterministic response, and thereby you can, and then you can of course go wild.
When you're talking, what one question that hits me is, how far is this still on the experimentation stage to try to find the approaches that works, and how far are we going down to sort of formulate the standard that we actually can use on a broader? This is also an open innovation topic.
Oh yeah.
What we decide is an appropriate model or approach for this.
Very good question. I think on the one hand side we have benchmarks, right?
Yeah.
All kind MMLU, I think, all kinds of benchmarks to evaluate this. But on the other hand side, we don't really have, like we had in object-oriented programming or object-oriented design, we don't have Grady Booch or Rumbau or the other guys and guys and girls defining the standard of how we do these things. And I don't think that exists. So what I'm saying with respect to job description, with respect to factuality, with respect to skills that you're supposed to be able to solve, those like more structured framework on how to do the evaluation.
So there's clearly a framework emerging, and you have maybe one of the most sophisticated frameworks around this in Google right now. And one of the key things I assume now is also to how do we bring this out to the masses, and how do we create this as a sort of, is we talking about in EU Act, do we have a regulatory problem, or do we have a harmonized standards problem?
Well, to go back to that thing, the fact that we do not have a process even documented, and for sure not repeatable. If you look at CMM terms, and we're launching all of these systems all over the place, that should ring an alarm bell to begin with, right? Because we have no repeated way of doing evaluation that follows a standard that we all agree on is good.
But we have all these benchmarks, at least that's something, right? Or how would you, if we frame it a different way, let's say that you are now helping a company, if it's IKEA or whatever kind of company, and they really want to ensure that they can validate and evaluate the LLM properly. What would be the proper way to do it then?
Coming back to that, what are you actually planning for this system to service? What are the,
let's say like customer support job or something, and then we want to ensure that it can answer properly.
Well, in that case, I would say that it's all about repair materials or returning my thing, or where are the different. I'll start to outline the top 5-10 use cases, and then based on those, I'd go as deterministic as I can and have time for, and after that, I start to venture into stochastic.
Shouldn't this be a part of what the cloud service provide, or some kind of tool for this?
I think so, absolutely. There is absolutely the ability to go up this kind of semantic stack of LLM testing, but most of the discussions are focused around the infrastructure. Right? And also code. How do I write an agent to look in my calendar? It's never about how do I ensure that all of my 10 agents are actually not doing anything harmful, like booking a flight ticket to Peru that I didn't ask for, right? So again, the evolution is mostly driven by forward motion and excitement of all of the possible things, whereas assurance vector, you can hear it in the word, assurance vector, like bringing it back and say we want to be able to also secure the quality of these things.
I think this assurance vector thinking, or this how risk management by design as a design trait, how we build systems, is going to be a fundamental for this to become enterprise grade. I mean, like, as long as you're not into that vector, you're doing consumer grade stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah. And here we go. You asked a question about the EU AI Act. And I don't know, can I use a bad word?
Yeah, please.
I don't know how much shit it's going to be piled onto this poor EU AI Act. Yeah. And I think it was the same scenario with GDPR when it came out. Everyone in the software industry, in particular the big tech vendors, like, I don't want to do this. This is terrible. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, these regulations are there to protect us, right? And to protect our rights and democracy and avoid the 1980 Orwell 84 scenario. 84.
Orwell. But I think this is so simple and so profound that almost gets lost. I mean, like, we are not doing regulation because it's fun. We are doing it to instill a risk consciousness in our fundamental.
Let's not go to regulation rabbit hole right now, right? Let's try to keep the topic now, for evaluation sets, if we could, and then we move into
because I think
topic.
Okay, so I'm going to take it back then. So the core topic then is, like, regardless of how you want to be a paragraph jockey, this is about risk management ultimately. And here is another way, when we look at evals, when we look at this from a hardcore engineering perspective, that I find super healthy, that actually informs us on the harmonized standards.
We have a topic, we will go into regulation very shortly, so don't be afraid, we will come there eventually. But just coming back a bit to the evaluation set, and we actually had a guest last week from LangChain. They use the term agent engineering, speaking about, it's not really the code that you are reviewing anymore or working with. It's really the behavior and the interactions between the agents when they speak to each other that you need to understand and observe, and in that way be able to evaluate if they do things properly. I think, the same could be said here, that, potentially if you use the term agent engineering, we need to have some standard how to run tests now in agent land, which is not like unit tests in a standard way with code. Now instead it should be these kind of evaluation sets, right?
Yeah. So, but can they be generic enough? I mean, to satisfy all of the different application areas? And again, we run into this discussion of, can we scope down from a general perspective this into these categories that I can actually test on a wider scale? Or what is the surface that I can cover? With the right
tooling, we should be able to do it, right? If you build a customer support agent.
I agree. I mean, if you can take, I have a chatbot, then you have a job description. Yeah, certainly. Exactly. And I'm all for it. I mean, that's why I sat down in the basement for 4 days. And I was actually frustrated in the beginning. And then I said, this is the most fantastic job in the entire world that I'm working with right now. I mean, I'd watched all of these AI system movies when I was a kid, right? 9 years old. Watch HAL 9000 break and SAL 9000 and Dr. Chandra trying to fix them. And then you suddenly realize I'm actually the computer psychologist here. I am the person talking to an HAL-like system. And as you know, from Dr. Chandra in 2001 and 2010, it was not HAL's fault. He was not evil. He was managed incorrectly. And it's so true, even though people could not even envision that the same capability, even far better than HAL, where we is today. And we have actually these problems that those movies picture.
It's like there was something happening last week, I think, where I think there was a Google engineer actually that used OpenClaw, and then it deleted a lot of Gmail mails from him. Then it's not really the fault of OpenClaw, I guess. It's really how you phrase it. Right?
No, and here is the thing. I mean, we have stochastic systems. If we're unwilling to box them down and behave according to a certain protocol, let's say that your system is successful. Your bot is successful 99% out of 10. 99% out of 100. Now you connect 100 of those decisions in sequence, and you have less than a 40% success rate. Okay, So that means you have more than 60% probability that those 100 actions sequenced will lead to some kind of fault. And of course, there's going to be catastrophic faults based on that too, within that 40% domain.
And here maybe is one of the major understanding or insights gaps if you look at people who really understand what this is all about, the way we are talking with you now, compared to the general public that goes bananas and just goes into this. They have not really reflected around the fundamental traits of the system when it's a stochastic system versus a deterministic system. And I give you an example how I see enterprises setting up projects and approaches of governance and steercos, which is appropriate for a deterministic style project, but it's of course not appropriate when the underlying techniques are stochastic, but this is beyond their technical or mathematical understanding right now. And now what you're doing now, if we want the beautiful benefit of the stochastic system, we also need to harness it. So this is this part of what is new that we need to do better for stochastic system.
Exactly. And here's the problem. I mean, in classical computer science, you built the app or you built the system and it was capable of just doing this. Now I can just throw an LLM at it and it seems like it's capable of doing this. So let's build the next thing. Let's put an agent in there. Oh, I need to integrate through a functional specification with the LLM. Let's throw that in there. So you're adding these layers and nobody's kind of taking a step back saying, this is all fine. But before we put these systems in critical scenarios, and that could harm us, we have to be really careful. And these are the mechanisms by which you need to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, hoping that we will have those kind of tools and standards not too far in the future, right? And should we go to the EU AI Act?
No,
directly?
I actually, as a segue there, I think this is a very good segue. I want you to describe more about what is your consultant idea, because now we are coming in from sort of, what this is all about, and you got deep into that in Google. And now you're coming back to Sweden. And you're from vacation mode into working mode in October, and you're starting up a consultancy in this space.
Yeah.
So what's the problem that you're trying to solve, and what's this all about? And then I think that naturally segues into the Act.
The unique, I hope that I can bring the unique perspective, having worked so wildly in this space for over 10 years now. I hope I don't want to be part of the forward motion. As I said, there's plenty of the forward motion going forward. I want to leverage my experience towards people that want to secure systems. Assurance vector is one way of doing that through products. But obviously, there's a huge need for also humans to talk about this. And talk about the methodology by which we do the evaluations, the job description, the factuality, the skill set of trying to box it in, these kinds of different things. And that is what I'm really passionate about.
And do you see what you're embarking on now as a product idea or as a consultant idea or a combination?
It's a combination. If you say a product idea, I mean, you're talking computers. Now you're talking determinism. Unless you're using LLM as a judge, then you can deal with stochastic scenarios. So now, we as assurance vector, we need to kind of decide how far can we go from an automation perspective. But there's always going to be the human perspective on this. How many times per day, it happens to me multiple times per day, do I actually say something and I realize what I was thinking, the person I talked to had no context whatsoever. And they're saying, what are you talking about? And I realized just sloppily how I use language. And with LLMs, we're bringing all of that nature into core computer science. And it's never existed before.
So if I take you, the hybrid view of saying this as a consultancy and product is on the one hand side, we can come to that, what is the underlying idea of tech or frameworks that you're wanting to productize. But there is a divide here and gap that understanding what that means and the semantics of this needs guidance and hand-holding, and that's where the consulting comes in.
Yes, And what does the EU, specifically to the topic we will come to,
At some point.
Maybe an unavoidable topic.
what is the EU AI Act saying about this, right? And is it correct to begin with? I mean, EU is farming, now I'm getting into it, EU is farming for advisory committees and scientific panels, right? These are the people, and I applied for a position there as part of Assurance Vector. These are the people that set the kind of framework for what is important and what is not so important.
Can I add a question?
Yes.
Sorry. Maybe some of our listeners is wondering why Goran hasn't been heard yet. And the explanation is that he's not here. But I was thinking when you were talking about the systems and how to sort of act around these, the responsibility or how to set them up to how they do the right thing. And I've been working a lot with project management and making sure that people know what they're doing and doing the right thing. And I was just curious to know, because my experience is that we're really bad at it. Just like you said, we say so much from the experience of thinking that it's, obvious that the one that I'm talking about understands what it is that I'm really asking for. And just when you were talking about role descriptions for agents or something, I would say that the majority of the role descriptions we have for humans are really bad too.
Yes.
How are we going to work with this when we have such a bad track record of doing this with people?
It's an extremely good question. This is what we trained to mimic humanity. But by the same token, there are things we can do as humans that weren't historically possible to do with computers. So the kind of opportunity that lays ahead, for good and for bad, whatever side you want to take, is that we're automating human skills in terms of thinking, logic, deduction that haven't existed before. And in order to do that, we need to take the step towards stochasticity. So we're never going to get away from it. The question is, to what extent can we actually control it? To what extent can we box it in? And again, I think what the first key thing is that when you open up a chat window to ChatGPT or Gemini or what have you, and then you ask a question, that it's like bringing in a person into a room, asking that question that has no prior knowledge on what's going on, and you have all of these ideas about what you want to have solved, right? So having an understanding that when we're introducing and trying to scale these systems to have human-like skills, inherently we're introducing these faults. And the way I see it, at least, the only way we can make them more secure is by having increased deterministic evaluations, and thereby we need to scope them down. And we do the same things as human. Like I said, when we go to work, we are scoped down.
Yeah. And from a technical point of view, or some people listening to this, they really want to do this now. They want to have a scope down evaluation of an LLM. Is there some specific tools you would recommend, some specific way to do this, some specific service, or how should you go about doing this?
Well, yeah. And I wish I described the kind of taxonomy of the system that I'm talking about, the job description, the factuality. I'll actually write that down. You need to, let's get back to the question. Well,
I mean, let's say you have built a customer support agent now, and now you want to really understand, I want to evaluate it properly, so it doesn't say the wrong things, it doesn't do what the Amazon customer support did with selling at the wrong price and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I want to build an as secure and well-working evaluation as possible. How do I do that?
So I'm coming back to the same thing over and over again, right? Yeah. What is important? What are the use case? What are the output scenarios you want to be able to support? That's your evaluation set.
But how do you technically do it? I mean, you can write down, of course, a set of questions and answers and say these are wrong and these are right. And right.
Then you test factuality. I mean, you make sure that it's getting the facts from an authoritative place. Either you can, there are technical ways of doing this. You can use the functional call out or the specification part of an LLM, where the LLM has been trained to be able to understand if the question is about a certain thing, I better make a call out to external code in order to satisfy this, and then please send this context back to me to continue.
But perhaps I'm not making myself clear here. I'm trying to see, how should you build up evaluation sets? Are there any good open source tools to do this? Are there some commercial services to do this? How should someone that want to do this go about?
I think there are some common pattern, but again, I think that the forward-moving piece has gone has limited. Nobody wants to talk about evaluation. Like I said, evaluation, well, it's a necessity, right?
Yeah.
But you're more interested about talking about the amazing thing that these agents can do, right? Because it's more exciting. I think it's a learning process, and it is definitely a learning process in the industry. There are many companies launching things that are not successful. I mean, fast food chains, you've heard the stories, ordering 1,000 hamburgers.
But let's go down this tangent and let it make more concrete. I mean, like we had different guests on this podcast. I mean, like we had Miguel, who is at AIAW, who's working with sort of to productize compliance or AI Act approaches within AIAW. And of course, AIAW, one part of their business is biometric business, because, I mean, like the biometric doors, I mean, like safe security locks, right, and all that, for jails and for any other things, if you look at what they do in the US and stuff like that. Now, of course, he now look at, okay, we need to have AI Act compliance. And one of his main pet peeves, and I think this plays into this, he says sort of more or less like, it's not so much that we have a regulation issue, it's that we don't have harmonized standards. What to test, what to evaluate, in what way, and how do I do that by design so I can fail fast, so to speak. So in my opinion then, we are looking for harmonized standards around testing and evaluation for all kinds of machine AI, and now here specifically we have a new, left corner curveball with LLMs, right? Is that the way to sort? Because it's in this context now. How should Scania, how should AIAW put this into their workflow, sort of thing?
Yeah, from an evaluate.
That's the bigger question.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's again, the focus is normally how do I get to the capabilities of the AI system itself. There are guiding things in the EU AI Act, taking one example, that you can use that opens your mind a little bit to what's important, what is not important, what is prohibited, how should I think about this. So a regulation like that certainly gives you kind of a framing about how I should think about what are critical systems versus not critical systems. Common benchmarks, I guess, would be fine. I mean, you could create benchmarks for chatbots, certainly, that tests negative surfaces in terms of job description, etc. But I haven't seen any major, mainstream. There are evaluation platforms. Most of them are infrastructure or infrastructure as a service. But going up the level of the next thing, actually testing the application layer, that's another thing, right?
Yeah, but just to bring about, the previous guest, they have this kind of Langsmith product. It's the commercial offering from LangChain, and they have their way of building evaluation sets. At least it gives some kind of idea. I actually think the best cloud service that have integrated the most is actually Google Cloud in this case. So they apparently are integrating a lot with Langsmith. So at least there are some tooling, some way to do this, right?
Tooling, absolutely. An infrastructure, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, there's tons of evaluation platforms that will produce nice graphs for you and can test for many different benchmarks. But again, if you get up to the application layer, the balance becomes the application layer in deterministic computer science. There is no general test specifications, but there is the opportunity for AI systems. Absolutely, that exists.
As you said, either you can try to force the LLM to give a structured deterministic output, or you can let it keep the non-deterministic unstructured output and then have another LLM judge to actually force it into a structured output, and then once
Correct.
again.
And these are the
Right.
technical building blocks of the evaluation, right?
Yeah.
And above just the evaluation platform with the tables and the graphs, these are the job description, the factuality, the skill set, the security. I mean, you're not supposed to talk about this. Kind of in instructions and evaluation sets. Those can absolutely be created. But then also on a higher level, you can probably generalize some concepts around AI systems. That wasn't possible in classical computer science because AI systems you can talk to, you have a much more flexible interaction surface with them. But again, the more critical, the more security and the more harm the system can do, the more predictability you want and the bigger the job is becoming to close it down into that box.
But let me test an angle on this now, because the problem is here, like, it's so contextual in terms of what you need to try out to frame. So isn't it more than even that we need to get this into the engineering life cycle, and then we talk about shift left, we talk about, you know, what is the definition of done. So we have built DevOps and software has built practices on what is robust software engineering for years, right? And now we need to go up from software engineering to data engineering to AI engineering, and now all of it to agentic engineering here, right? So all of a sudden now, isn't then the approaches to eval is an extension of your testing and risk management strategy, and therefore needs to be an integral part of your software engineering practice?
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. I mean, evaluation on AI systems, that's part of the CI/CD pipeline.
Period, right?
And as I said, I mean, every morning I want to wake up and see that we are stage 3 green, compliant. Okay, then we can say this to this VP or
But
this to this
is
VP.
it that the way? We need to create a toolbox that fits into software engineering toolbox that makes eval definition of done simpler and clearer.
And what I talked about, LLM as a judge, to turn stochastic responses into deterministic evaluation scenarios, factuality, job description, skill set, those are building blocks to that entire strategy. But the industry has a lot to kind of learn to standardize that. There's one more point. I mean, it's no accident why programming is one of the top applications that we see come out there for AI-based systems, right? Why? It's highly deterministic. I got this.
Okay.
Don't interrupt me. I got this perfect. I got this perfect thing now.
Okay.
What if I tell my code transformation system, please convert my project over here, which is 300,000 lines of COBOL. Okay, I want you to convert that into a Java Enterprise Edition system that has the same capabilities. Then I want you to compile that code base, and I want you to call this function that I know from the COBOL function does all of these things that may be complicated and returns a deterministic answer. Completely deterministic process, right? And what have I done? I've taken 300,000 lines of COBOL, converted it into Java, and made sure that the logic actually worked on as complex scenario as I could potentially imagine. So these are the things. They take time to invest in, but we can use AI systems to create them as well. But this is the kind of thinking you need to have. How do I turn, even if it's it's a completely stochastic problem, converting that code base into this code base. But how can I actually look at it? What can I do from a deterministic perspective to kind of get away from as much stochasticity as possible?
That's a good example because it's a high value case and it's a very real case.
Oh, it's a real case, and if I have another model coming in, or they re-index the RAG database, or whatever, I can just run this case, right? Probably takes but it's automatic, so I can go to sleep meanwhile. And out comes this responsive screen. Wow, at least we know that the model is not hurting the baseline performance we had from previous models, right?
Let's hope we can do similar kind of verifiable evaluations for other non-deterministic
I'm all for
approaches.
it, and to be honest, I mean Article 15 of the EU AI Act. Article 15. We're going to.
Let's go there.
I'm continuing to talk about that. That's the kind of thing that it's the soft one, right? The system must have quality according to the job of the purpose of the system itself. That means no bias. That means da 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 da. So many of the other articles, they are more process oriented, but there you have kind of the softer aspects of application level testing.
And we need to go from a softer, fluffy view of this down to harmonized standards and understanding what it really means for the engineer.
Yes, and we're taking some steps, right? There are mechanisms by which you can test bias in a system. Could we automate this further? Could we actually have more research and engineering go into bias detection? Totally, right?
Yeah.
And that is kind of a backward. What are the monster standard data sets for measuring bias in an LLM from a generic perspective? I want to see them.
We have to ask ChatGPT, perhaps, preferably. The time is flying by here, and we usually have a small break in the middle of the podcast to just speak a bit about recent news that we would like to bring up, and then we get back to the question. And hopefully at that point, we can go to the topic we have been dancing around for a long time now, which is the EU AI Act. But before that, let's do a quick round the table here for thinking about, some potential news. Henrik, do you have something?
I mean, so I'm going to start in the release of the AI strategy of Sweden that Slottner presented, I think, end of last week.
Yeah.
Or it was, it was Monday.
It was a few days ago.
A few days ago. And we've seen this story now. We have the AI Commission. It came out with a report. What we liked with this report was it was quite action-oriented, I would say, and didn't have a budget. And then we saw earlier in the year, or in the budget proposal, where I think is almost more important than the actual any strategy document, is put your money where your mouth is and starting to fund different things. And here now we sort of have a still, so the strategy is released, which is essentially then a 30-page document that is called a strategy, and then is associated handlingsplan, action plan, which is another 12 pages. And that was presented on the news and all that. And yeah, what's our take on that?
For one, I'm super glad we actually do have an AI strategy now. So kudos to Erik Slottner and others to actually.
Yeah, because we've been bitching about this for a while, that we don't even have an AI strategy. But what changed? Was there anything that came out there that is sort of putting something new on the table, or sharpening some things, or how do we feel about it?
Well, one of the things they were speaking about a lot is we should be one of the top 10 companies when it comes to AI, but not really defining perhaps properly what that means. I mean, should we have the top 10 LLM from Sweden? That's actually partly said in this strategy as well, because they want to build a unique AI model for Sweden, which I think is very, very questionable, to be frank. And as you see, you're laughing now. I guess you're agreeing, Magnus? Or?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to start on a very,
But before that, let me just give some more positive notes. I think, they had a big section on AI for security purposes and defense. And I think, in the current geopolitical situation we have, I'm very glad to see that. And we also need to use AI for these very critical, use cases that we're seeing in our society today. So I'm very glad to see that they actually put extra effort on that note. Then, I think we potentially should focus more on doing something similar to what Amazon and Apple is doing. They are more, they're not really bringing frontier AI models to the world, but they're really good in using them. Mm-hmm. And perhaps that could be an opportunity for Sweden as well, which actually already have rather high AI usage in our citizens and companies. So if we instead could simply reap the benefits, so to speak, of using AI and adopting it for our use cases, I think that could be an immense opportunity.
Yeah. But
Can I add something on that one too? I'll admit I haven't read it in detail,
Yeah.
but I thought from the first thing that they released some time ago about the way forward for Sweden and AI, they had this part about some similar initiative to the PC for everyone that they had in the 90s, which they were calling like AI for everyone. And as far as I could see, there was nothing about that one in the new official strategy.
So let me be. I'm not so sure how positive I am because for me, if you call something a strategy, for me, a fundamental view of a strategy, it should be some sort of selection or prioritization what you're not going to do and what you're going to do. And a general idea, someone explained to me, you should be able to put not in front of it in different statements and it should make sense. So if there are things that are sort of, we should have great customer experience. That's not a strategy because it's a platitude, So the challenge here is that I think they have done a really good job in clarifying ambition and clarifying ambition trajectories, what they think are important. So it's a way there. But I still think it's very hard to understand what does it mean that we're concretely going to do. So when we say, as an example, we are going to be the top 10 in using AI. For me,
it doesn't say using, it says more generally.
Yeah.
Which is sad, right?
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
So what do you mean with it's application of AI we are talking about, and then ultimately it's sort of it's on the strokes are so broad, so I don't think they are driving a selection.
There you go. I mean, let's take, if I may, let's take all of this and feed into the machine of things we've already talked about.
Exactly my point. What I was trying to go.
AI has a lot of opportunities. We have to be AI. 100 government agencies by 2027 must adopt AI, right? Because it's so strategic. And by the way, we must train a model that adheres to Swedish values and the Swedish language. What is your evaluation set that you are running on today's technology that is failing? Okay. Why do you need, I mean, just rather than saying it, because you're looking at it from the perspective of the opportunities, but what are the actual problems you're trying to solve for?
Yeah, and this is, it couldn't be a better episode to paint the canvas on the pros and cons with the AI strategy around the fundamental eval view and how to rein it back.
And
so instead of, so the AI strategy is following the trajectory of the AI industry is outwards looking, which is fantastic, great. But we need to make fundamental choices. If we decide that we all know we don't have enough money to do all plays in here, we need to be very stringent on where do we put our resources now. So then this, what did you call it, vector?
Assurance vector.
Assurance vector is missing in this document.
Yeah, I mean, assurance vector is missing, but even before assurance vector, what are we actually trying to achieve? What are the use cases that we are trying to support that we have not had a company in the world already spend a huge amount of electricity and natural resources to train already? What are the use cases?
Yeah, and now, of course, the tricky point becomes, how do you balance this? It becomes a national strategy versus going into something that doesn't belong on that level. So I don't think it's an easy job, but I think it's the challenge to also pinpoint what are the key inertia and blockers. So I think we have a bigger invention absorption capacity. Do we have a technology problem or do we have something else? So where is the focus of investment and focus on being great?
Yeah. I mean, Swedish values, the models should be trained to understand and reflect Swedish nuances, etc. Or very fine. So we should be able to train models, okay? We do have the Mimer infrastructure in Linköping to do this. So it's not a problem, right? Now, can we talk for 1 second about the effort involved in training one of these LLMs, right? And what are we actually trying to achieve here? Because you cannot just simply say train models. We can do context engineering. That's a different thing. But to train a model that from scratch at the level of DeepSeek or Gemini or GPT, right? I did the calculation. Okay, so there is something now called the GB200 from NVIDIA.
Even 300. But yeah.
GB300 exists as well, right? It's a super pod. You can place it in a vertical thing. You connect and then you can place 8 vertical things next to each other. It all needs to be liquid cooled, okay, because it consumes so much energy and heat that you have to rebuild the data center to be liquid cooled. Now you place one of these animals into production, and the baseline cost of one of these units is around 300 million kronas. Is that correct? I think so. Let me check on that. But okay, now how long? Now we have this hardware, right? Now we're going to train it. So how long would it take for this thing to be able to come up to the training that the state-of-the-art models have? It takes 200 days approximately, 186. So that's half a year. And that's from start to scratch of the one successful run, okay? Discounting all the work you did to trigger that specific successful run in the end. So you have to, first of all, 180 days, you forget about it. I mean, half a year from now, we're going to be stuck in the Hitchhiker's Guide from Galaxy, right? 183 days from now, we're going to look at the system and say, what did we ask it to do in the first place, right? And it says 42 because...
So it becomes imperative that we are getting from this ambition level to more fundamental choices in the engineering space, but and you know, another piece of this strategy is that it's focusing on this as a tech problem. My understanding when I go to enterprise is that we have an organizational problem, that we are not software companies that are organized according to a data AI first approach. And there is very little around in this AI strategy that looks at invention absorption capacity.
But even before that, what are you actually trying to achieve? What is the utopia situation that you would have? If you take 100 government agencies, what are the eval sets you would run for each of them to say, oh, now we are more optimized, we're more efficient, or we can do these things?
To put it a bit more also in not too negative a context here.
I think we
can see the problems here. Of course, I think, you know, one way to phrase what you're saying is we should have a more value-driven approach. What are we trying to achieve? How are we going to evaluate what value it actually would achieve if we were to do something? And I think the strategy, for one, it's focused a lot on research parts, and a lot of we need to build an LLM, the tech part, and not on the value part. And I think, you know, the whole shift from actually having a value-centric and more engineering-focused mindset here in what the product should be and what it actually should bring as a value is something that is missing completely today.
Yes, and this was also already in the AI Commission. It was clear that it was ticking all the boxes in terms of how we need to improve as a research company, as a society or country. But engineering, if you look at what do we need to have the engineering capability and what are the tools that engineers need in order to succeed in public sector. So we have a huge gap in understanding that part.
Kajsa Norin, she's been here. Yeah. And she said, she put that word possibilities, möjligheter.
Yeah.
You see possibilities all the time, right?
Yes.
And of course, yes, I want to be able to roll it out because all of these possibilities. But again, that's not what you're looking after. You're looking after what is the concrete value. What are the use cases that would make it?
So it's from the art of possible to
know, I have a research background as well. So there are points and values with doing research, which is more from, you know, finding possibilities. But there are also a lot of values from engineering where you really want to find the value, and then you go back from the value point and see what you need to do, not the opposite way. We need both. And I think what tech companies in the Valley and Google that's been at is really successful is of course they have research, but they have a tons more engineering in building the products as well.
Yeah.
And that's missing, I think, in Europe and Sweden.
And we had Sverker Jansson, who's heading up AI in RISE, the Center of Excellence. And I think he said it so well when he was comparing Silicon Valley and Sweden, how they had the tech giants spawning a huge cadre of engineers who then goes out and has ideas and brings and breeds engineering superiority through the whole ecosystem, and where basically that's sort of that's a key muscle we need to get to in Sweden.
But still, I'm very glad that we have a strategy.
Sure.
So we shouldn't be negative.
I think we also need to make the point that from a politician point of view, talking about AI is very problematic.
Yes.
Because it's very few points they can make from an election point of view. And the general public is usually negative when it comes to AI because it will take their jobs and it will abuse in this and that way.
It's a hard
so it's
debate.
tough for a politician to actually go out and actually make this kind of push. So I really commend him for that.
Yeah, totally,
Right?
totally, absolutely.
So what we are saying here is not bashing what they are doing, but it's trying to strive for better and sharper.
AI will be a strategic necessity for any nation going forward, and we have to adopt AI. But we have to be careful taking the step to how too quickly before we have thoroughly at least had a roundtable discussion of what do we want to try to achieve. But you're right. I mean, it is a top-down. And I guess that is the point. It is a parallel track, right? All the activities that you do, if you lay them out as things, if you have to connect them serially, it's going to be the sum of the time of all of those activities. But if there are things you can do in parallel, okay, then you are in an opportunity. So whereas infrastructure and Mimer and all of the other things are very, very important, and the liquid-cooled superpods, for example, one question is, what are we doing with supervised fine-tuning data in Sweden? Where is our data factory? Not just taking textbooks. I'm not talking about taking textbooks or factual books, but like Scale AI was for Facebook and OpenAI and all the other ones. Where is our national Scale AI that is responsible for taking our private, within Sweden, data sets and making them available for AI? It's not about taking books and feeding into the system.
We have Corby that does a great job, I think, here as well.
Corby, and there was a new. Actually, there was another news today. Corby is furthering developing, and they get more money to focus on the Swedish language models. So there was
we need to move forward here.
Yeah, sorry.
But I think I still want to end on a positive note here a bit more.
Please do.
I think still we have a strategy now. Great. I think we have an opportunity if we do take the engineering approach here and build some kind of reference architecture saying this is how we fine tune it, this is how we adopt it, this is how you find out if it actually provides value or not. We have an amazing opportunity, I think, in Sweden to do so.
No, absolutely. And at least the way I'm coming at this is that I don't want to be negative from the perspective of being of not committing to this in any shape or form or fashion. I just see that there's a lot of things we could optimize and be better as part. And we're doing things. I agree. We're doing things that are good, but there are a couple of parallel tracks that are not being prioritized. And those parallel tracks, they have their points of sequences of activities, and
this is the positive note then, because as long as you stay on the highest abstraction level, the granularities which matters don't show up. So what we are actually asking for is one level more of granularity.
Or a parallel track here.
The parallel tracks for me would signal what is now when we read is a blind spot that needs to be spotlighted.
But moving on to another topic.
I'm sorry. I just want to jump in again.
We're never going to get away from it.
No, but this might be a good
Okay.
And I know, Anders, that you asked me before if I had a news that I wanted to bring, but now I do.
Okay.
And this is sort of like an anti-news, because as far as I know, the EU had their own deadline for a specification on Article 6 which is the high risk classification part.
Ah, okay.
And so the anti-news here is, of course, that they haven't. So they've sort of went under the radar and haven't produced a more specific response to what sort of products or services are going to be sorted under the highest risk part.
So they have a law that is enacted without specifying really what it means. And
Yeah.
And that's the harmonizing standards kind of debate we've had for a long time, and we will get to the EU very shortly, I'm sure.
Okay, so this was a huge rabbit hole on that AI strategy news, but in the end, we are looking at fine-tuning a high-level strategy into its core parallel
And
tracks.
speaking about fine-tuning,
Yes.
we actually have another article that I think is small news. I'll just take 30 seconds, but. China, of course, have amazing models. We have the Minimax 2.5 recently released, and we have the DeepSeeks and the Moonshot AI and so many more. But this was an article that Anthropic has actually digged a bit deeper into who is using their model. And they detected 24,000 fake accounts in Anthropic's API that are extracting and scraping data from Anthropic and from Claude. So then they're basically distilling. This is knowledge distillation. It's a technique very commonly used and very useful to have, which we should use in Sweden, by the way, but in a legal way. They did this, trying to get away under the radar with fake accounts, a large number of them, and then from that, training the Minimax and Moonshot and DeepSeek model. So, of course, we see these kind of open source models that China is releasing, and they are amazingly good, and they're smaller, and they're surprisingly efficient. But I think we are a bit sometimes overestimating the power that they have, because it's much easier to do if you cheat and you distill. If they wouldn't have the access to the Claude models, would they really achieve the results? You don't think so?
Well, I mean, there's a flip side to that. Not long ago, we were discussing training LLMs on copyrighted material in the first place, right? So, I mean, just a year ago, the big LLM vendors were using copyrighted material to create their LLMs. Now...
but that's two different questions.
Yeah,
one is, of course, is it fair use to use copyright material? And I think according to American law, it usually is. But still, that's another question. The other point I'm trying to make is how big a moat is it from the tech giants to build these kind of frontier AI models to other smaller companies? And I think the moat is bigger than people think.
Yes.
Because they're cheating here a bit. And then they can actually build much smaller models because they have high quality data they can train on by distilling it from Anthropic.
This is super important topic because it points in the direction what those parallel tracks and fine tunings that we need to do in Sweden should be all about.
Yeah.
Because if you
should learn from China here, but do it legally.
Do it legally because the core topic here is if you come back to the DeepSeek and all that, well, it's amazing they could do this from nothing. Of course they couldn't. So what you had as an example before on the fundamental heaviness of going into the foundational LLM in the beginning. Don't even go there if you don't have billions and billions. But let me finish. Here now it comes like the proof is in the pudding. They are cheating to make it cheaper and smarter. But it's actually if you do that legally, you see the trajectory, the strategy of fine-tuning, distilling from something huge. And even then, it's an American model, blah, blah, blah. Forget about that. As long as we distill and fine-tune in the right way, we can overcome that and make something great in Sweden. But try to do it from scratch.
No way.
But the question is also, so distillation is bad. I mean...
No, it can be used good ways.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Sweden should do that. Sweden should do what China's doing, but legally. Right?
Totally. But distilling in this way is bad and illegal and you shouldn't be doing it.
No.
But by the same token...
What's bad? What's the illegal stuff here is that they're they're not doing it openly, or they are trying to steal someone's IP.
With 24,000 fraudulent accounts.
Yeah.
It's obvious.
Or they're taking Llama, open source, and distill from Llama that has been trained.
They could do it, but it's not as good, of course.
It may not be as good as the Anthropic one.
But if you then flip that to what's the legal way? The legal way is to do it openly and pay for the stuff, and it will be very expensive, but it will be way cheaper than trying to do the whole model from scratch.
But by the same token, I would say this also. It's not just the case that China may be leveraging in a not so good way, fraudulent way, leaning on American technology. One thing with China is that they have a data advantage that no other country in the world has, because of the way that their government system is set up.
Sure.
I mean, there's a lot more potential to collect data for
But you
the
still
correct
need to have the talent, the competence, and the techniques to
Totally.
do the training properly. And I
But
think
i-
unless
but
they
if-
copy American
But
ways,
if you look at
they
this
can't
now,
do it.
and let's not go into political systems and that, but if you want to copy the techniques, so what the China techniques of having very good own data, distilling from someone else's model, and then creating your own magic on top of it, that secret sauce is highly. We can do that in Sweden, in my opinion.
Well, as we
Legally,
just,
of course.
Oh,
Legally, of course.
legally, and I hope that's part of the AI strategy here, because as we said,
That would be amazing.
I mean,
That would be amazing.
Core training to reach 10 raised to the
Yeah.
25th level of flops, which is the systemic risk of EU AI directive, using one GB200 superpod or 300 superpod requires 183 days. We're never going to be able to do
No.
that.
But this is feasible.
This is feasible.
So what
but,
we're talking about is finding the feasible path.
Yes, but where are you going to distill from? And you need to have a model to distill from. Obviously, you're not going to do it with the online services, because that is violating the laws to begin
But
with.
you can make an agreement with them.
You can make
You
an
can
agreement.
make an agreement with them, potentially, or use their open source models totally. Or you could use other open source models.
I mean, like if we would try to keep it within Europe, you would try to leverage Mistral in this case, right? Would that be good enough?
Yeah, I mean, they're not on the same level, but they're very close. They're the best in Europe for sure.
I mean, like so.
But-
So because if we follow your strategy, that is not about the art of possible, but it's on the art of practical. That is repetitive. Maybe Mistral is good enough in
Well,
order to retract back to something that can.
But
be,
anyway, we should find ways to fine-tune, post-train, and distill, not train from scratch. I think we can conclude that would be
this-
good.
Yeah, totally.
And here, this is the segue back to the AI strategy. These are the kind of things that I would love to see in terms of choices of how we are going to succeed.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That might be in there, but it can't be read.
Okay. It was a fun new section, but
Quickly, a 400 billion parameter model takes what? $200 million to train.
Yeah.
Okay, from scratch.
yeah. Okay, I shouldn't go to Sven AI, but okay, let's continue now and let's move.
Man,
into
that was an
the
exciting news. I got rushed,
Yeah.
rosy cheeks.
Oh, awesome. Okay, thank you for that. Should we do the AI Act? And I'm not sure really how to approach this topic properly now, but
Let me have an attempt.
okay.
Because I think when you are starting up your consultancy now, one of the angles is, of course, how to work within the AI Act arena, because that's where the consulting is going to happen. So how have you looked at AI Act, and how have you looked at eval, and where the opportunity and the consultant and the product space is?
Let me start not from the consultancy perspective, but the product perspective.
Perfect.
Okay, you have 150 pages of legal text. Okay, that is pretty good. I mean, technically also pretty good. You have probably 10 to 14 different personas in this thing: importer, distributor, provider, deployer, public authority, financial institution, size of your regular company enterprise, etc. You have a number of different classifications: prohibited, high risk, limited risk, systemic risk. You have 2 families of AI product, AI systems, as opposed to general models. Now, and the last thing you want to spend time on as a company is to read through all of these different permutations.
Yes.
The what's the combinatorial effect of this? It's in the millions.
and figure out if this applies to me or not. So the way we look at it at Assurance Vector is the following. We want to take the responsibility based on information that you give to be able to distill down exactly what you need to do in order to comply with the EU AI Act.
Depending on your category. Your system, your category is
exactly.
called this.
I'm a provider of an AI system that is doing a general chatbot in the flight booking.
We've talked about this business opportunity.
Yeah.
This is obvious.
So if you're that kind of system, you're not a high risk system.
No.
You're not prohibited. So
Which is 90%.
yeah, that's 120 pages of the 144. So drop those to begin with.
Yeah.
You need to answer or have good responses to the following question.
Do you have a solution for this, you mean?
Oh, yes. We
Really?
have a minimum viable product right now
Jesus
that
Christ.
we built on with our own knowledge, and we're going to look at Series A funding.
Because if you look at the combinatorial
Yeah.
opportunities of this, there's so many different ways. So
Yeah.
if you want to navigate this, it's impossible. But if you push it into a model, it filters out the right combinations.
Yeah. And then based on that, I mean, we can vouch for, to the best of our knowledge, assurance vector, that we can use LLM as a judge based on your answers, identify how good or specific they are and how you comply to them. And we can say, yeah, this looks good. Here is a certificate for you. You're now, I mean, according to the best of our knowledge, which we hope is the industry standard, you are compliant. There's no...
So you
no
mean
need
you can more or less do automatic compliance, you think, with this? Or
So yes, it's a big part is just clicking out to kind of homing on the context that is important to you. And the other one is to make sure that, do you really have this and this and this and this and this?
Yeah.
Because if somebody calls you from the EU, you better have this and this and this.
Right.
If you have all of these things, and by the way, you can also describe what you have, we can analyze all of these different things and say, you're in a good place.
do you help actually generating the things you need to have as well? Or
I mean, obviously, that's part of the job, right? And that is, I mean, just looking at transparency, most of the systems are not going to fall into prohibited or high risk.
No.
And most of the vendors obviously are not systemic risk GPAI implementations according to Article 51. So there's probably going to be 300,000 transparency systems out there.
the one that can create an agent that does this properly, that's
Yeah,
going to be such a success
because if you
factor.
think about this, it's not how should I put it? It's not that hard, because in the first step you need to categorize where you are. In the second instance, you need to understand what documentation is required in relation to that.
Yes and no, but I think there are problems here because they don't even have a way to know how it's supposed to be compliant.
Right.
Right. So it is a big
So
problem.
you need then to add your knowledge.
I've tried it myself. You
Yeah.
feed the AIAW Act and say, create an evaluation suite.
Yeah.
There is no AI system that's going to create
Because no one
something
know what it should
useful
be,
for
right?
it. Exactly. What do you mean? So human intelligence needs to go into this process. A very close eye to what the regulation, where the regulation is going. What is important? Any prejudicat.
So in order to build your system now, you needed your eval background.
But not only that, because what Louise just mentioned, for Article 6 here, there is no specification of what you need to do to make sure that you are compliant.
Yeah.
So even if we can find the part, you need to be compliant with this, but how?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Definition. Yeah.
And here is the thing. On the one hand side, you want EU. You want us, EU, protecting us as citizens here when AI systems are launched. On the other hand side, you have all the companies, right? EU wants everyone to be compliant. I mean, we're protecting our rights. The companies find it extremely cumbersome to start this 144-page description. So the purpose of Assurance Vector is to be able to bridge those environments and say, this is what you need. And we talk to EU, I mean, when we have all of the committees and advisory forums in place, we talk to the EU to make sure that the best practices and what's going on in the legal system gets distilled down to...
You have a customer from us, I can tell you directly, if you manage to do this. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
But such an awesome...
The business idea is brilliant, right? But it's not. I agree. It's clear cut. In principle, it's clear cut. But as long as things don't have harmonized standards or definitions, it's then you need to fill in the blanks.
Yeah, and here is the thing. If you're a transparency vendor, you don't need to be officially registered at the EU database at all. Yeah. But you need to have certain things in place. Yeah. AI literacy, Article 4, and you need to have all of the transparency obligations in Article 50. So Our job is get that information, get your certificate, and now take the uncertainty out of this process, sleep well at night.
Awesome. And I guess for most use cases which are not falling on high risk or even medium risk, then it's rather easy to be compliant, and we perhaps know how to even do that if you just document it properly, etc. Right?
Yeah, but you need to follow the regulation, any modification. As a company, you're always living in this limbo space as something changed. What sources do I need to be connected to understand?
The problem is this knowledge divide on how to tackle the problem and how to organize the problem. So it's a little bit, I say, when someone has done it and you show it, it makes total sense. Mm-hmm. But when you sit there with a blank piece of paper and don't know which angle to read first or how to read it, it is not so easy.
No.
But if someone has done the grunt work and then I look at it, yeah, that makes sense.
I think you wrote also somewhere, I'm not sure when, but I think you said something, Magnus, about the AI Act actually could be a guardrail for innovation, not hampering it. So
yeah.
What do you mean with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's putting down...
I agree with you.
No, it's putting down the structure, eval if you want, the playbook, and it's going to be an iterative process. All work we do with machine learning and artificial intelligence is iterative work, much more so than any time before in computer science engineering. It's putting down all of the cornerstones of what you need to think about, what is important, what is not important. So that's why it's kind of creating iteratively over time our definition for what is okay to do and what is not okay to do in this role for this kind of system.
So if you actually go through the evaluation or compliance path, it could actually open up some ideas. This is actually what you can do. In that way also, increase innovation. Right?
Totally, absolutely. And you get to think about, well, first of all, you get to think about the opportunities. It drives your roadmap, right?
Yeah.
You see the high-risk systems here. Can we avoid being a high risk? Is this particular feature very important? I mean, you saw Meta's controversial articles now regarding the glasses.
No, we didn't talk about that. That was news as well.
And I mean, clearly some of those categories that they're talking about, they fall into the prohibited or the high risk.
But perhaps we can integrate the discussion about the meta glasses as a good example of what the AI Act is really saying about this.
Yeah.
And perhaps you can elaborate a bit more, Magnus, here. But of course, the glasses then is potentially surveillance.
I mean, doing general public biometric identification, for example, Face ID, is a prohibited practice.
Yes.
So according to EU AI Act, you cannot launch a product like this.
It's not even high risk, it's prohibited.
It's prohibited.
Yes. But still, we have now a product which can do that, right? And
so there's going to be this discussion, I think. And Meta actually, I don't know if we should be talking about this, but there was an internal memo that was leaked by Meta, reported by reputable organizations, where there was talk about we have to do these things now to get them onto the market before legislation actually picks up, right? So, and I mean, that's not a surprising thing for a company that wants to launch a product, obviously.
But just to give some more details about what the glasses can do, and please correct me, I'm not fully read up on this, so I'm not sure what the functionality is. But to my understanding, the current version of the Ray-Ban glasses from Meta, they have some experimental facial recognition feature, but it's not in a product yet, right?
I know, I don't think it's there, but there's been reports of, I mean, recording leakage of very private situations that where people have not been aware of that the glasses, the data has been sent over.
Well, they certainly have cameras, and you can like ask it questions through voice and saying, what this kind of shirt is that? And then it can answer and give some text in some heads-up display that they have.
Yeah, and what we're talking about, I think technically the functionality is that you are seeing someone in a party or in a networking environment, and you get the biostats of who is in front of you.
And what emotional state they are in if you walk into a meeting. I mean,
stress.
The product is awesome. It's so much fun, right? but it's also so extremely scary.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I want to
privacy
go,
implication is of course horrible there.
I want to test with a little bit where you were going in the trajectory of how regulation is actually part of the innovation process in a good way. And I think if you simply, this is back to what I talked about a little bit before. If you simply flip, regulation is about creating risk consciousness. So what we are talking about that is more or less in any system you build. If you take the iceberg metaphor, we have the innovation in terms of value that is the visible part. And then there are all the things that can go wrong or that can screw up a system, which is the, under the surface risks. So simply by looking at value vectors, as risk vectors, you have a much more conscious understanding of what system you need to build. So one example, we work with how to better understand what to test and evaluate with the TEFN in AI Act in RISE. We started to define what are the fundamental risk vectors of an AI compound system. So, you have the model risk vector, you have the data risk vector, you have the process and governance risk vector, which is essentially then, if I flip it, the value side of a product launch. So if you want to build a strong product, you need to be good at all these things and you need to take away the friction in all these dimensions. Otherwise, your product will fail. So ultimately, safe and smooth are just two sides of the same coin. And therefore, to have a risk-conscious view on innovation is fantastic. It allows you to build a stronger process. Do you see? I mean, that was my rant. But
Yeah. No, I totally see that. And why would anyone be skeptical against a framework that's trying to protect us? And how is it trying to protect us? It's trying to say that if you build a system like this and you violate these laws, we are going to get money from you from the perspective of percentage or your turnover or whatever, capped at 35 million. I won't say the exact numbers.
6% of revenue.
So why would we be hesitant towards that? In the first place.
Intentions is great. I think no one is really arguing against the intentions of the EU AI Act, right?
But I would again say the EU AI Act is not heavy for transparency.
No.
It's difficult to understand all the paths, but it's not documentation heavy for transparency. For high risk systems, right? There's a lot of work to be done. But then again, this is like allowing cars to drive in 300 kilometers on your road without having road signs. Okay, there's no regulation. You can.
So if you think about it, like the what they classify as heavy or high security, all this, there is a reason we want that to be more heavy to do, because you should not play around in that category if you don't fucking know what you're doing.
And by the way, if you're doing research development, you're just playing around. You're doing military applications or certain law enforcement applications, or you're just privately fooling around with the system. You don't have to comply with anything.
No.
You're completely out of scope.
So I think as soon as we flip this into risk consciousness conversation, and then I think we have concluded, and I stand by it, we don't have a regulation problem, we have a legal uncertainty and harmonized standard problem.
Yes.
So it's the legal uncertainty and harmonized standards and the muddle through that fucks everyone up, not the actual regulation.
I would agree.
Cool. And
we can leave this topic now.
I think we've spoken too much about it, but cool. So
that was a good AI Act topic, by the way. One of the best.
And I think if you succeed, Magnus, with the product you're speaking about, that would be a killer app. That's
really, a killer app. It's a killer app you're working on.
Yeah. Okay. If we go, you've been working with compilers a lot and XLA and these kind of things and TensorFlow, etc. in the past, and I think you mentioned sometimes that everything, potentially comes back to code in some way. But now, we're moving into these kind of more agentic kind of environments, and code is perhaps coming more and more, less something that humans deal with, and we are perhaps even starting to work more with the behavior of agents, and then eval sets, which are the tests. What do you think, source code will mean in the future?
Andrej Karpathy had the perfect quote to this, right? ChatGPT was launched when? In October 2022. There is a Twitter feed from Andrej Karpathy, who was the engineering chief, AI chief at Tesla. Fantastic educator. Yes. I think it's dated 21st of January something. English is the hottest new programming language. And I don't think he understood at that point how, he understood, but he didn't understand. I hope I'm fair saying that. And it's true. You look at coding today. Will programmers be replaced? I use the coding assistants all the time. I do not write code anymore.
Do you look at the code?
I do sometimes. Sometimes I do not. But sometimes I do. I would say this, the only value I feel is I know what questions to ask. Yeah. I know how to bring it all together. Will that change in the future? Maybe, perhaps. But to what extent? At the other extreme level, are we going to be sitting here allowing some computer system out there do whatever it wants? Then what is the connection between what I need and what I want and these autonomous systems out there building something I'm not even aware of? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, fully.
I need to be attached somewhere in this value chain, even though AI per se is taking on some of my responsibilities. And I think we're going to get into the kind of what does this mean for humankind going...
We could go there, but before that, we can also think about, if AI models now are generating the code more and more, and humans less and less, perhaps we're not even letting AI write the code. Perhaps it just do machine code directly in the future, right?
There's a research paper where a lot of research scientists have gone together and say, let's adopt a standard, okay? When we train thinking models, let us decide that they always are going to be thinking out loud in English.
Right. But I have a take on what you said now, and I think I'm paraphrasing several people. On the one hand, Oliver Molander, I think he wrote it quite brilliantly. So one way of looking at the new coding paradigm and is a little bit like if we lift our game and to talk about what is a great software engineer or a great systems engineer, and we look at that as a pie diagram where we have 10 different facets of what great software programming is all about. From ideation, system design, understanding the customer, navigating, communicating with the team, delegating and all that kind of stuff. All of a sudden now, what happens now is that the core identity of a great programmer has also always been related to one of these pies, coding. And actually what it does, it emphasizes that a great software engineer is in the 5 other pie parts of the pie. And therefore, the identity of a software engineer or software programmer has not changed. It's equally important, but it's just that your identity is not in that particular slice of the pie. And I found that kind of metaphor quite telling. So we need software engineers for sure, but what they do and what they excel at is all this soft stuff that you need beyond the coding.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Well, yes, I agree. But then there is the question of how far can AI go?
Yeah, good one.
Because it's moving fast, right?
Yeah.
English is the new hottest programming language again. So programmers use English, and that's fine. But
I think for one, AI is enabling people that couldn't code to do programming in the future.
Sure.
So it will broaden the possibilities for people to build things for people that couldn't do it at all in the past. So that's nice. I think there will still be a lot of opportunities for specialists. Someone that is an expert in how to do things on an edge device or whatever it could be, but they still, of course, use AI to do it. It's just that they have specialized skill, just as they do today. It's just on a higher level of abstraction.
I agree.
And at the very highest level, if AI does everything else, I think there is a human
Still,
there saying,
yes.
what do we want to try to achieve?
Yes.
Defining
Going more value-centric.
what is important
what's the core
in our
design
lives. This is a tool,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to be satisfied with just a data center running agents over there unless I have decided what the goal of all of this is.
So it's the goal setting and the delegation. But then I also think, as if you take the abstraction metaphor, it will be quite advanced, complex, adaptive systems when we are starting stitching things together. So if we look at, you don't work in the machine code, or you're not dedicating memory. So you're working on a higher abstraction level, and coding today is already stitching things together. And imagine now that one person can stitch together a whole ERP system on their own. Is essentially the same thing, and of course. So I understand. So of course we're not going to need maybe thousands of software engineers, but the skill.
It could be also that we simply can do so much more. I think there are so many things that we do not do today because we don't have the productivity to do it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we will have less engineers. I think we will have more.
Yeah, and this is Jevons law. Have you heard about Jevons law?
No.
So Jevons law dictates that when the cost of doing something goes down, substantially, it opens up new opportunity surface areas, and we would start coding and doing things that we could never dream about that we would have taken in. So throughout history, Jevons law has prevailed. It has increased the need for engineering simply because now there's more things to be engineered.
And even to the extent, if I'm just quickly, I think Sam Altman said something interesting once, which was for 2 years ago. He said, I think in the future we will have on-demand software. What he meant with that was that if I think right now I need to have some way to bake this pie, then I simply tell my AI, build me a software to do this. And it builds it at runtime right now. Yeah. You execute it, and then you throw it away. And the same thing can be for, right? I mean, imagine the number of software, application we were building and just throwing away.
Yeah.
So then it's not hard to imagine that we could actually be needing a lot of software engineering in the future.
But I mean, you've had me on the podcast before, so you know this. I love to draw my historic card. And I think it's always so fascinating to think about. We see this as this one in a lifetime shift, and it's definitely not, if we look through the history of mankind, the only shift that we've had on this sort of scale. And the biology of human is that we are put on this earth to solve problems. And if we don't have problems, we will find new problems to solve.
Yes, we will. I think so too.
Very true.
And I mean, it only provides, just like you were saying, Anders, that of course we're going to find new stuff that we need to solve that we haven't had time to before.
Yes.
And I think that kind of wraps into the final discussion as these systems become more intelligent. We always have the fear everything will go bad, right? But let's finish on a positive note here. We need to be able to nourish that curiosity for invention that these systems provide.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very, very important strategic direction we have to work at. And it actually requires a lot of work because the alternative approach is the kind of Wall-E approach, right? Where we just get pizza served out of an oven. We don't know how to make pizza, but we just watch TV and eat pizza. We have to keep the curiosity and the willingness to innovate. That's the important thing.
So it's the consciousness of how we want this world to be as active choices in the small things and the big things.
Yes, and in that case, I think AI becomes a tool rather than something that controls us.
Okay, that was a great segue potentially to the final question here. And we usually end these kind of podcasts with a very philosophical question to you, Magnus. And if we assume that we will actually have AGI in a few years, do you have any thoughts about when potentially we'll have AGI?
So I was very... I had a very good, firm definition of AGI 6 years ago. It has completely evaporated. What does it mean to be AGI? I mean, we have AI systems today that are more skilled at particular things than humans are, for sure. I mean, we've surpassed human capacity on many, many different dimensions. So I really don't want to even talk about AGI.
But if we still, of course, playing chess or doing calculations or even knowledge management, I would argue, AI is today extremely much better than any human. But still, there are other things that humans do better, of course. So we can go there. But then potentially, if we use, let's say we use Sam Altman's definitions again on an AGI, and he basically said something about when we have an AI system that can be on par with an average level human coworker, then we potentially have AGI. And I think actually we're far from that still. Because if you need to take and actually do all the things that Henrik is doing, he's not average, by the way, but just saying...
I'm way below average.
No. But still, taking and saying, okay, tomorrow I throw out Henrik and I use Gemini to do it. It will fail. It will not be able to do at all what Henrik can do. And I just, challenging anyone to try it, and you will see, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I would probably agree that Henrik is unique from that perspective.
and then we have the stacking up, like, okay, to be the equivalent of a human person in front of a digital screen. And then we can take it even further to be the equivalent of a human being with physical dexterity. And then we can take it all the way, AGI, physical dexterity in the lab versus out in abundance around us. And then, of course, there are many, many hurdles, which is...
But at least if we use an AGI as a definition of being able to do general things, we certainly have specialized intelligence today, no question about that, right? But if we think we have general at some point in the future...
I mean, how far away are we? I mean, ChatGPT was launched November 2022. When I sit with Gemini or any other systems today, I take a picture asking it, what kind of TV should I buy in order for the angle to be perfect? And how far away from the wall should it go so I can tilt it without hitting?
But still, I can think, when coding today, you can see the reasoning is not even there in many cases. So, I mean, it's really good in knowledge management, I would argue. But in so many cases, I know in advance this will fail.
The star programmer of Spotify said that I haven't written a line of code since November.
But they are working and telling the AI what to do all the time. So it's not about programming, it's not about writing lines of code anymore, right? It's really about designing what it should do. So you tell the agent to do it, but you're still in control. And you still have to tell it, that was wrong, this is right.
Well, yeah, but what is the opposite? When you don't tell it and it makes decision on its own. And what does it make decisions based on then? What objective?
Yeah. And we're not there yet, right? And I can very easily see, even for the use case where AI really shines today, which is coding, and then if you go invoice management, marketing, whatnot, it's even worse. But in coding, it's really good. But I can still see very easily, I know this will be something that AI cannot do, right?
Sure.
So there are clear use cases where AI, especially when it comes to higher level of reasoning, that I would argue that AI is really bad at, and then taking actions is still surprisingly bad. And there are ways to go, but we are getting closer. Right?
I would say this, in 2022, if I said what was here now, like
the progress is amazing, of course.
Like Isaac Asimov, hello, future people, he does on the video, right? I would be completely baffled.
Yes.
And when ChatGPT, that moment hit, and I thought, the Turing test that's done. I mean, this is just, it's done.
So we are moving the goalposts, and I mean, like, and we had the fortune of having Karim here from, who talks about real world AI and the fundamental issue and problems of reasoning and learning in the real world, which is not actually built into the LLM as it is today.
But my take is this: if I look at AGI, it's almost like this. I put a bit of godlike nature into it. It's like. It reaches singularity and it improves itself iteratively through recursions. And finally, it says something that we cannot even understand because it's so intelligent and it's playing on
another. Then it's AISI, right?
Yeah.
Artificial superintelligence. But if we just think AGI, and perhaps that can come about rather quickly. And it sounds like you think...
I would never have envisioned not coding a single line
Right.
for a month or two.
But it's interesting
But
because
you still code by telling. Okay,
Oh yeah, of course. But
Yes.
I am the objective. I am defining the objective, and that's getting back to what I talked about before.
Yeah.
I want to be defining that objective.
Yes.
Otherwise, you'll have these millions of autonomous agents doing what I don't know what they're doing. What kind of
which is
objective?
a
they have.
more scary idea. But Anders, you are still you've been zooming in on the Kurzweil 2029
Yeah.
for a long time, and
still
you
there.
are in one way now bashing yourself that we are further away from AGI. At the same time, we see the progress.
I'm still at 29.
So you are consistently in 29 for 5 years, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, but that leads into the okay. Do we? If I flip it, do we think it will happen? For me, it's inevitable that it will happen, but we can argue on if there how fast and we will get there. But to get to a point where we can live up to the Sam Altman definition, I think it's not a. I think we are a couple of progresses away. I'm not sure LLM in its own is there, but I still think that we will solve these things.
But what have we achieved? If we have this AGI that we cannot understand, that is more intelligent ever than we were. It's like the movie Her. The AGI goes off, and I don't want to deal with you anymore.
Let's go to that question then. Let's say that we have AGI and even ASI, then super intelligence, like 1,000 times more intelligent. We have no way to even understand what it is speaking about unless it wants us to understand. And then you can think about one extreme, of course, is that we will have the dystopian future, the Matrix, the Terminator, and the machine. The Wall-E and machines trying to kill all the humans. And that could be rather bad. And then we go to the other extreme, the utopian version, and what Nick Bostrom wrote about in Deep Utopia. And it could be a world where AI helps to cure cancer and fix the energy crisis and fix the climate change problems, and basically makes the world towards this kind of world of abundance that Elon Musk calls it, where the cost of products and services go to zero.
Yeah.
Right. And then you don't may not need to work 40 hours a week anymore.
Sure.
Right?
And the important thing, the Skynet thing could well happen. I mean, it all depends on whether we have control of the objective function.
Yes.
And actually going back to Isaac Asimov's
Yeah,
three
the
laws
three
of
laws.
robotics,
Yeah.
right? And even those are complicated in prioritization when you talk about humanity versus the life of a single person. These robots get in conflict, right?
But what do you think, Magnus? Do you get closer to the dystopian or utopian future?
I do think, I mean, Kurzweil, he works at Google. I am an admirer of the singularity, the bootstrapping kind of thing. Do I want to have it? That's the thing. When I all my life, I wanted to have this. Now I'm like, I probably don't want to have this. I don't want to have a super intelligent machine that I'm supposed to worship because it's so much more intelligent than I am.
But where do you end up on the spectrum?
think it will be
If you
positive?
speculate, it's a useful philosophical. Where do you think we?
I think there will be a lot. I think there will be a lot of changes to society because of this amazing tool that we have now created. I think we are not talking about. I hope we're not talking about a Skynet scenario. We got to keep our eyes on the objective function. Let these machines continue to speak English, please. Because again, the objective function can change over time. And as we said, 99% certainty raised to the power of 10 just gives 40% success rate. In that case, we're in real trouble, even though we have 99%. So a drift in the objective function is extremely difficult. Now, I like Joshua Bengio. What keeps me up at night is somebody using these tools to create a virus with incubation time of 1 week that is airborne. That's gonna be bad for all of us.
But that's also what you said is like, Anders has said many times, I'm more scared about the journey towards AGI when some malicious person or someone human are using AI badly and fucks it up on the way.
And isn't that a much more likely scenario?
Yes.
Likely scenario when it comes to human harm.
So the human harm will come from humans doing fucked up things or unintended consequences.
Let's hope we get there. And I think
But it's back to us humans consciously taking the right steps each step of the way.
And I think also it's a lot about what you're trying to do here, Magnus, which is, for one, make sure that we have a way to do evaluations properly, to know what the objectives we're trying to achieve really is.
Yes.
And not the least, to also perhaps use legislation as a way to improve innovation, right? So I think, if you just deliver on what you said, I will love to see.
Yeah. And my end note is that the eval conversation today is a very tangible way to explain to consciously do good, which is amazing.
Yeah, and that's the good part of the story. It's actually we like these systems. We don't want to limit them.
No,
but we want to walk hand in hand with the evolution of this
which
technology.
is a huge difference to someone who's an AI doomer and who just wants to shut down the whole conversation. You are saying, no, we need to consciously do good. Yeah. We need to eval good on the way.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, please continue the great work. I'm really happy to have had you here and heard all about these kind of amazing discussions. And
and good luck with that.
Assurance vector.
Obvious business opportunity.
Jesus, if we get that assurance vector.
Get that done, man.
Thank you so much, Magnus Hyttsten. It's been a true pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.